Okay, so here's the second worksheet. This one is called worksheet 1B. The other one was 1A. So all of these are going to be a little trickier because the coefficients of each of these guys are not 1. They now have a number in front of the squared term. This one's 5, then 4, etc., etc. There's several ways to do these, and I'm going to do them both ways so you see and you can figure out which one you like the best. One method is called guess and check, and I know it's not the most favorable method, but it sometimes works in a pinch, and if you hit the factoring on the first go-round, why not? So what you do is you set up your two parentheses to indicate where your terms are going to go. 3p squared is your first term, so that means the first of each of those parentheses has to multiply to give you 3p squared. So there's only one way to go with that. It's 3p and p, because when you multiply 3p times p, you will get 3p squared. Okay. The second piece of it is the last number, 5. Those go here and here. Two numbers that multiply to make -5. So 5 and 1 or 5. Now, the problem with this is the guessing method, because you have to check a couple things. So your options are 5 and -1 or -5 and 1. Those are really the only two ways you can get -5. So what you do is you put those two numbers here and here, and then you just check. You see, I call it the smile method. I do the smile. And I multiply the first two together and I get 5p. And I multiply the second two together and I get -3p. And I look and see, does that give me what I want for that middle term? And +5 and -3 together do not give me what I want. So that choice is not the choice I'm going to use. Okay, so that one's out. So that means I'm back to the drawing board. I get rid of those. And instead of a 5, I use a -5 and a +1. You just switch to the other term. Multiply together. So these two together makes -5p. These two together make a +3p. And when I add those together, I do get what I want, which is -2p. So that means my guess and check gives me the factor pattern of 3p minus 5 and p plus 1. Now, oftentimes people think that's a very cumbersome way to do factoring. So let's try a different strategy and see if you like this one better. Okay, so I'm going to erase this for now, or actually, let's see if I can move it. I'll put it over here, and I don't think I can shrink it. No, let's delete it. Let's get out of here. Let's delete it. Okay, so again, let's try a new method that I think might work. Okay, so this one's called the slide and divide. And it can be confusing at first, but just bear with me and try it. So take your first coefficient and multiply it to the last coefficient. Okay, so that would be a 3 times -5. So it turns this equation into p squared minus 2p minus 15. Okay, because I just slid the 3 and I multiplied it to the last number. All right, once you've got that last number, 15, -15, list all the numbers that multiply to -15. Okay, so you've got -3, +5, +3, -5, 15 and -1, -15 and +1. So you've got all these choices. Okay, you want the combination that gives you -2p. All right, so if you can see it, there it is. Those two together will make -2. So that means I'm going to rewrite this as p plus 3 and p minus 5. Just taking the 3 and the 5 right here, the 3 and the 5. Okay, but remember, we did not start with this 3 being over here with the 5. So what we have to do is we have to now divide that 3 out. So we have to divide it. Okay, well, that's not a problem with the first term because that just is going to turn into p plus 1. But the second term has this weird 5/3, which is okay, but I don't like it. So imagine if I moved the 3 here. Just multiply it over there, and it becomes 3p minus 5. And let's see if that works. So take p plus 1 and 3p minus 5 and multiply them together to see what you get. First terms, 3p times p is 3p squared. Outer terms, minus 5p. Inner term, 3p. And last, minus 5. Collecting terms, voila, I've got what I want. Okay? That's called the slide and divide. It's not as tricky as you think. You just have to practice it to make it perfect. So let's try another one. See if you can get that to work. Okay? Let's go down to this one right here. Okay. So first thing is to slide, take the 4, multiply it over here. So that's a 16. Okay, so we're multiplying by 4. So now you rewrite this that way. Okay, it's just like you took the 4 and multiplied it at the end. So 16 is the number you're working with, all the factors of 16. So you got 16 and 1, 1 and 16, 4 and 4. Okay, 2 and 8, 8 and 2. Okay, so you're looking for the pair that is going to give you a negative 17. So remember, to get a positive 16, you either have 2 positive numbers or 2 negatives. So here we go. Those give me negative 17. So I'm going to rewrite it as n minus 16 and n minus 1. Okay, but the problem didn't start like this. It had this 4 that we multiplied. So to get rid of it, we have to divide it. So divide, divide. And the first one's easy, n minus 4. The second one, you don't leave it on the bottom, you put it in front of the n. So it becomes 4n minus 1. And that will be your factoring. Okay? That's called slide and divide. Some people really like that method. I'm going to try using a different method, which is called grouping. Okay? So let's go back to this first one that we did. And I am going to use a grouping method, which I think might resonate. Okay, sometimes people like the grouping method really well. Okay, let's get rid of him. Wish there was a quicker way to erase that. It used to be that I could do that. No, won't do it. All right, so what we're going to do is I like to look at my first and my last terms, and I just multiply them together. And I get negative 15. So it's kind of like what we did before. List all the factors of negative 15 again. So you have your negative 5, positive 3, positive 5, negative 3, all the way down. 15 and 1, negative 15, positive 1. So list all the factors. Remember, if it's negative, it has to be 1 negative, 1 positive. You want the pair that adds up to negative 2. Okay, so there I hit it on the first shot. Now, without moving the 3, okay, without moving the 3, rewrite the entire equation with the terms here, each of them getting a p. So if you notice, this equation that I just wrote down is not any different. This is no different than the first one. It's just instead of negative 2, I stretched it out and made it negative 5 and a positive 3. Then what you do is you group it. You do 2 at a time. So you do the first 2 together. What's in common there? Pull out a p, and you get 3p minus 5. And then you do the second 2, including the sign, and there's nothing in common, so it gets a 1, 3p minus 5. And then the first 2 terms go together, and those 2 guys become 1. That's grouping. So you pull the first 2 terms out, and then the 2 that are the same, these parentheses must be the same, and they're represented once here. Because remember, if you saw this multiplied by this, the way you would solve that, or way you would multiply it, is you'd say, okay, it's p times everything over here plus 1 times everything over here. So we're just doing the distribution, but we're doing it backwards. We're factoring it. Okay? That's called grouping. Some people like that method better than the slide and divide. I don't know what you prefer. I'm a guess and check person myself, but I've been doing this 100 years. So let's try one more. Let's see if you can do this. Okay. Okay. So this one, I'm going to pick, what should I do? I'm going to do grouping. So I'm going to multiply the first and last together, and I get negative 36. List all the factors of negative 36. So we have 4 and 9, 9 and 4, 2 and 18, 18 and 2, 6 and 6, 12 and 3, 3 and 12. And because it's a negative 36, one of them has to be negative, one has to be positive. Okay, so I'm going to go negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, all the way down the line, just for fun. And I want the 2 that make positive 5. Look at me, I hit it on the first one again. So let's redo the equation, not taking the 6 and doing anything with it, but just rewriting everything like that. Same equation, just took that middle 5n and expanded it. So now with those two at a time, what's in common with those first 2 terms? Well, they have a 2 in common and they have an n in common. So that leaves me with 3n minus 2. Take a look at the second pair of numbers. What do they have in common? They have a 3. So I'll pull a 3 out, and that leaves me 3n and a minus 2. And the goal is to get the 2 parentheses to be the same. Sometimes you have to be careful with that sign, but most of the time it's easy peasy. So that 2n plus 3 go together, and then these two make their own way into a parenthesis. Okay? So that is another worksheet where you're factoring, but you're using a couple different methods, slide and divide, or grouping, or guess and check. Okay? So I hope that helps.